Okay, everyone, it's 6 o'clock, so we will begin. Welcome, everyone, to the Dayton VA Medical Center's Learning About the PACT Act webinar. We are thrilled to be here with you tonight. I want to start by saying this event is being recorded, so if there is something you missed or later want to rewatch, you'll be able to do that. We will be sending you a link to the recording after the event. You can also share that link with anyone you feel may benefit from information we're sharing here tonight. We really do want to emphasize that because the PACT Act is a really, really big thing here with the VA right now. It's expanding care to a lot of veterans, and we want to make sure that this information gets out to everyone. Every vet should know more about the PACT Act. I'm Scott Leese with the Community Outreach Office at the Medical Center here in Dayton. I am an Air Force veteran, and like many of you, once had many questions about VA healthcare. Let's see if we can answer your questions this evening about VA healthcare and more specifically about the PACT Act benefits that also come with that. Please realize that as a participant in this session, your microphone has been muted to minimize distracting background noises. We have quite a few participants on the webinar with us this evening, which is why we're keeping everyone muted. Again, this is simply to ensure there isn't any excess distracted background noises. That doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. If you have a question or a concern, you can share it with the panelists anytime through the chat pane. You should be able to find that pane on the bottom right of your screen. Simply type in your question, and one of the presenters will get to you as soon as they can. For the sake of time, if we don't get to your question during this presentation, you can reach us by phone or email, and we'll provide that contact information at the end of this presentation. Again, we are here tonight to talk about some very exciting news. Last August, President Biden signed into law the PACT Act, which is expanding healthcare to more than 6 million veterans, many of whom were not able to receive care through the VA before. The PACT Act is perhaps the largest healthcare and benefit expansion in VA history. The full name of the law is the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, honoring our promise to address comprehensive toxins, hence the PACT Act. It expands and extends eligibility for VA healthcare for veterans with toxic exposures and veterans of the Vietnam, Gulf War, and post 9/11 eras, as well as Korea and some other areas of operation. It adds more than 20 new presumptive conditions for burn pits and other toxic exposures. Adds more presumptive exposure locations for Agent Orange and radiation. Requires VA to provide a toxic exposure screen to every veteran enrolled in VA healthcare, and helps us improve research, staff education, and treatment related to toxic exposures. For those who are already enrolled in the VHA, this legislation affords many the opportunity to acquire or increase their disability rating based on presumptive conditions associated with military service during a wide range of military conflicts and theaters of operation identified in the PACT Act. And that's why we're really here tonight to talk about this, how the PACT Act might increase your access to VA healthcare and benefits. We have with us live this evening some experts to help answer any questions you may have. First, we have Mark Rona. He is our PACT Act program manager for the Dayton VA. Chris Cox is from our Enrollment and Eligibility Office. And Larry Zietlow is from the Veterans Benefit Administration in Cleveland. Again, I am your host, Scott Leese, with the Medical Center's Community Outreach Office, and I will help answer any questions you might have about the Dayton VA Medical Center in general. Now, before we begin with questions, Mark Roner is going to give you a brief presentation that goes into more detail about the PACT Act. Take it away, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott. Hopefully everyone can hear me. As everyone can see on here with the PowerPoint, what the PACT Act does, and as Scott mentioned, it's expanding the eligibility for veterans as a result of any type of toxic exposures. It's helping to more or less improve the decision-making process, fast-tracking by adding presumptive conditions and increasing that listing. That's going to help Veteran Benefits Administration be able to adjudicate and work your claims for service connection much faster.
Yeah. Mark, if I
Every
could interrupt here real quick. If you could turn your camera on, we can't see you or Chris or Larry. So if you guys want to turn your cameras on. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay, I have it on, but it doesn't look like it's showing me.
Okay, you're just the ghost for this evening then.
Yeah, sorry. It's showing that it's on. Sorry about that. They're also doing, and maybe it'll kick on here in a little bit. We're doing toxic exposure screening on every veteran that is enrolled in Veterans Health Administration in the VA medical centers. This is primarily being done during your primary care provider appointments. It expanded and made a lot more available education and research for these different types of presumptive conditions, as we do these toxic exposure screenings and registries, we might start discovering and seeing some other additional medical conditions. And this is the purpose of doing the toxic screenings. It's allowing more research, more funding for that. In addition, it's helped a lot with the HR hiring process so that way we can build up a better workforce, expedite the hiring process, help with retention, decrease turnovers. And this does not affect members of Springfield as much and Ohio in general, but they're going to be building about 31 different types of medical centers or new VA healthcare facilities. That's going to really help the veterans in those much more rural areas, Wyoming, Montana, things like that. What it did with, as far as your post 9/11 Gulf War area, it added additional locations for presumptive conditions, and we'll talk about presumptive conditions in a minute, as well as added for not just presumptive conditions, but what from Veteran Benefits Administration will be considered a Gulf War era veteran to then file for Gulf War related illnesses. And these are just some of the countries listed. Next slide. As far as radiation, and I just recently spoke to someone that dealt with the atoll cleanup. It expanded some additional locations for people that may have exposure to radiation during cleanup processes. Next one. The Vietnam era veterans, and this was a big one. It added several other additional locations. Thailand was probably the single biggest one that was added. Guam was a big deal too. And in addition, it also added 2 more additional Agent Orange presumptive conditions, hypertension being the single biggest one. Next slide. Okay, and the conditions. So here's a listing of the presumptive conditions as it relates to toxic exposure, burn pits, Agent Orange, things like that. Here's a listing of some of the basic presumptive conditions. And basically, what presumptive means, it's going to be presumed. If you have this medical condition and through some way to verify, a DD 214 is usually the easiest. It can be verified that you were in this region during this type of time frame. You have this medical condition. It's presumptive, that it was as a result of, or at least connected with, your military service. And again, here's just a good general listing. The toxic exposure screening, again, what that is, it's primarily going to be at your primary care doctor's appointments. They recently are doing them in specialty clinics, but every veteran enrolled It's going to be done once every 5 years. It's a quick 5 minute question that would be asked by your medical provider or one of their medical staff, usually their LPNs. And it's to give us, the VA, an idea. What are your concerns? What are you, the veteran, complaining about, or not complaining about, but what's your concern from what you were exposed to? And out of that, what are some of the health conditions that you're worried about, or what are the health conditions that you do have? And can we start to do research to find that link if it's connected? Next screen. And this is just a quick breakdown of the registries. Over on the top, you have your 6 congressionally mandated, created registries. And then the bottom, those are some other ones that are not formal registries, but they're basic garrison exposures that we know of that also have a great deal of health effects on veterans. And then in the box is just a nice little breakdown of the time frames. To file a claim, to receive benefits, another thing with the PACT Act, a big thing is in the middle. If they're helping expedite the claims process, but a big thing with all these new presumptives, and I know Larry will mention this, if you were previously denied in the past, the VA is not going to reach out to you and just reopen that claim. You will still want to file the claim for now, that presumptive condition. But there's 2 ways to do it. You have a new claim or a supplemental claim. But we would always encourage you to get with an accredited veteran service organization, or every county in the state of Ohio has a Veteran Services Commission. One of those organizations, they can help you with filing. They will know whether to file a new claim, a supplemental claim. Next slide. Another thing with a PACT Act deals with DIC, dependency and indemnity compensation, and burial benefits. So with all those presumptive conditions, a lot of them are cancers, which unfortunately a lot of veterans have already passed away. So if you would know anyone, a veteran and their spouse, the veteran has passed away from what is now a presumptive condition, we would encourage that surviving spouse to file for DIC benefits. Go to a veteran service organization. Ask for assistance in filing for those. Unfortunately, the burial benefits, there could possibly be some benefits for reimbursement, but it's definitely worth them to talk about. Next slide. And how would you want to file a claim? Again, you, the veteran, have every right to go ahead and you can file on your own. However, we would still encourage go to a veteran service organization. And again, if you've previously been denied a claim that is now a presumptive condition, you will want to refile for that condition. Next slide. And here's just some general information. If you have just a general question about the PACT Act, there's an extension there, 5807 or 3259. That also gets you to the Environmental Health Registry Office. You have the Enrollment Eligibility Office for the VA, 5336. You can also, again, go to websites, look things up for yourself if you want, see a VSO. And then at the bottom is just a link to the registry's website that also lists those presumptive conditions, the different exposures, the registries, and that breaks it down in a very easy to follow navigation. Next slide, or I believe that was it. And now we'll open up for questions.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Marks, for that informative information. Yeah, let's go ahead and take some questions. We've received a couple in the chat pane already. Please remember, if you have a question, feel free to ask it by typing in the chat pane. We'll get to it as soon as we can within the time remaining. Um, and if we don't get to your question, which I think we're probably going to have plenty of time. Hey, Mark, you're on now. Great. I think we should have plenty of time to get to everyone this evening. The first question is Scott's asking, is Camp Lejeune contaminated water part of the PACT Act? Mark, would you like to handle that?
So with Camp Lejeune, there is not a formal registry for Camp Lejeune contaminated water. However, veteran, there are presumptive conditions as a result of Camp Lejeune contaminated water exposure that you can certainly file for. You're not filing for exposure to Camp Lejeune. You're not filing for exposure to Agent Orange. You are filing for a medical condition that has been diagnosed, and then it's as a result of presumed of that exposure. But there is no filing for just contaminated water.
Right. That actually leads to another question is, you had mentioned before there are a lot of other registries out there. Those registries do not automatically uh, transfer over to the PACT Act, correct, Mark?
Correct.
Just because you filed under the Agent Orange registry does not mean you're going to get that additional care or that you're going to get a increase in your service disability rating or anything of that nature. You still need to file a PACT Act claim, correct?
Correct. Being on a registry does not solicit, start, or create a claim for that condition. A registry has two purposes. The one is to help Department of Veteran Affairs data collect. It took almost half a century for the VA in Congress to add hypertension as a result of Agent Orange exposure. This is the registry is where they get that information. And then the other portion is to educate you, the veteran, about these are known health conditions as a result. Let's talk about those and see if you have any, and hopefully you don't. But if you ever do develop or start to develop these type of symptoms, this is what it could possibly be. Let your physician know. Maybe that can help with your overall prognosis. But also, it's for them to get that data collection. They're also going to do a history on you and see if they identify anything that is not a presumptive at this time. We see enough of them to follow a trend, and then it's worth doing those studies. But it does not create a claim. Just like filing a claim for Camp Lejeune well, there is no registry. Filing a claim for diabetes as a result of your Agent Orange exposure in Thailand does not mean or place you on the Agent Orange registry. They are two separate programs run by two separate entities of the VA,
Mhm.
but they do have a lot of intermingling and intertwine with each other, but they are separate.
Right. And it's a popular question tonight because Jack is asking, how can I tell if I am on the Agent Orange registry?
So to find out if you're on the Agent Orange registry, I would have you on that last slide, which will be provided later on. You can either call my extension 5807 or you can call extension 3259, either one of those, and then we'll be able to pull you up, take a look, see if you are on the registry. If you aren't, we're going to go ahead and get some things set up and scheduled to get you on the registry. But also, please be aware, and part of this is because of the toxic screening. Um, we have an overwhelming number of referrals to our department. And so it may take up to a week to answer if you had to leave a voicemail. And we just ask for patience.
Terrific. Okay, Joe is asking, how does a veteran get enrolled into the VA? Now, That's really a two-pronged question there, because there is the VHA, which is the Veterans Health Administration, which I think Chris can answer to, but there's also the bigger issue of how do they enroll with the VBA, the Veterans Benefit Administration, for the PACT Act. So, Chris, you want to go first and explain the healthcare side? Because a lot of people think when you enroll with the VA, it covers it all. It really doesn't. There are two arms here that we're talking about within the Veterans Affairs organization. There's the VBA, Veteran Benefits Administration, and the VHA, which is the Veterans Health Administration.
That's correct, Scott. So when it comes to the VHA, the Veterans Health Administration, all we need is for you to bring in DD 214 yourself and fill out a what we call a 1010 EZ within our office. You can also do it off a line that we can provide later on. And if you'd like, come to our office. We're on the first floor, and we're by the green desk. Come by, fill that form out, bring your DD 214, and we'll be more than happy to get you enrolled in our system.
Absolutely. And we'll give you the address to the Med Center later on. And Larry, you want to talk about the VBA?
So, yes, thank you, Scott. Many of the things that are said here that have already been said bear repeating. With the Department of Veterans Affairs, you go to the healthcare center and you go to the medical centers to receive medical care. At the medical center is where you'll enroll in the various registries. And the purpose of the registries is to allow the VA to gather data over a long period of time and do the research necessary to add these conditions to the various presumptive lists. So again, a presumptive service-connected disability, we automatically presume that certain disabilities were caused by military service. And that's what the PACT Act is all about. The unique circumstances of your service, is presumed that if the condition is diagnosed, then, and you served in those areas, you will be considered service connected for those conditions. Now, if you've ever filed a claim with VA for disability before, you may remember that one of the things that had to be proven is that there was medical evidence in your military record to show that you received treatment for this disability, and that there was a link between the treatment you received in the military and the current condition that you have now. That's not the case for presumptive disabilities. So the long list of disabilities that exist for post-1990 veterans, for the Gulf War veterans, and the two new disabilities that have been added to the Agent Orange list, those are considered presumptive. In other words, if you served in Vietnam and you now have hypertension, that hypertension will be considered service-connected. The disabilities are separate for Camp Lejeune, for the Vietnam vets, for the Gulf War vets, but the presumptive rules remain the same. It's important, if you are a Vietnam veteran, that you take a look at the presumptive list of disabilities for things related to Agent Orange. Over the years, a number of new disabilities have been added to that list, and you may find that you're not aware of the whole list of disabilities that you will be eligible for compensation for. So the PACT Act coming along is really a good thing for folks like me at VBA, because we really want to remind you to come out, come talk to us, ask us about your disabilities, and let us determine whether or not conditions that you have might be related to your Agent Orange exposure, even if they're not hypertension or the other disability that I can never pronounce. So you need to come and talk to us. And there's a long-standing belief among veterans for all the years that I've been involved, that if I go to the medical center and I get treatment for it, then I have filed a claim for disability. And that's just not the case. VHA and VBA do not talk to each other in relationship to filing a claim. You get diagnosed at VHA, you must come and file a claim with the Veterans Benefits Administration. You can do that at the VA regional office in Cleveland. You can do it with your local county veteran service officer. Every county in the state of Ohio has a county veterans service commission, and you can file your claim there. You can file your claim online at va.gov/PACT, and you can look up there and you can actually file the claim online. You don't ever have to leave your home. But I strongly encourage you to get in touch with your county veteran service officer and research the PACT Act, research what disabilities you may be eligible for, even if they don't happen to be covered under the current PACT Act guidance. Thank you.
Right. And, you know, another thing we probably want to add into this, Larry, is it was mentioned a little bit earlier by Mark, but there's also survivor benefits as well. Because, you know, we're talking primarily to the veterans themselves right now, but VBA is key in that, is making sure that survivors receive the benefits from the service of their spouse. So.
That's right, Scott. When the veteran dies as a result of any service-connected disability, the widow is entitled to dependents indemnity compensation. Remember that if you are the widow of a veteran now, and you find that the veteran had one of these Agent Orange related or PACT Act related conditions at the time that they died, they don't have to be already diagnosed. You can file the very first claim for dependency and indemnity compensation. Your spouse was in Vietnam. Your spouse was diagnosed with hypertension. Your spouse is deceased, and you believe that the hypertension may have been contributory to his death. You can and should file a claim for dependency and indemnity compensation. Again, see your CVSO, come to us. Also, we have representatives there at the VA Medical Center in Dayton, and you can go in and see Amber Freilich or the service officers that are at the medical center and file your claim with them.
Absolutely. They're right in the front of the building there, and all you have to do is go into the front door, and the folks at the information desk will tell you to go right there, another 20 steps around the corner. Barry is asking, I received a letter in the mail saying I qualify for benefits because of the PACT Act. Who do I go to now? And I think that's very important because there's a lot of information out there from less than credible sources now that would direct you to a private organization or individuals who would say they would help you seek your benefits and charge you for it. So I think it's really imperative now that we say that if you receive a letter saying that you're eligible for the PACT Act, whether it's coming from the VA or another source, where do you go to first?
Scott, I want to make this clear. As you mentioned, there's a lot of information out there, some of it from very good, credible sources, others that are saying, come work with me and I'll get you your PACT Act money. I will make you qualified. And some of these organizations are taking money from veterans and widows up front in order to file such a claim. You don't need to pay anyone to file your claim. You can file a claim whether it's for health care, whether it's for veterans compensation benefits. You can file your claim directly at the VA Medical Center, at the regional office. Again, I stress the County Veteran Service Office where you live will not ask you for money to file that claim. So please see those folks. If you get that letter, bring it to one of us. Let us read it, regardless of where it's from, and we'll give you the guidance you need.
Absolutely. And while we don't have a VSO on with us tonight, I'll tell you right now that those folks work doggedly for our veterans, and they provide service beyond words, quite frankly. So I echo what you say, Larry. Go to the VSO or any of us, whether it be at the medical center or online or wherever. Yes, absolutely. Do whatever you can to get those benefits that should not cost you a dime. Or to have to go through an outside source to get that. We're here to serve our veterans. Robert says, I'm already service connected for the Gulf War. Why should I join a registry? I
So
think, Mark, you might want to answer that.
again, there's a difference between being service connected for a medical condition through Veteran Benefits Administration and being on a registry. Now, there is a Gulf War registry and there is an Airborne Hazards Open Burn Pit registry. You are service connected for that, for a medical condition as a result of your time in the Gulf War. Well, joining the registry again helps data collection. Maybe through you being on that registry and having that health assessment, we will start to pick up and see additional medical issues that no one's thinking of is a result of toxic exposure. But that's where we would start to see those trends and look at that data and then see, should we start to do some research? So that's why you would still want to join. Plus, you're going to be with a health specialist who's trained on the toxic exposures. They're up to date on the presumptive conditions. Maybe there are some additional presumptive conditions you are not aware of that you do have some slight hidden signs, symptoms of. Our specialists are going to pick that up. Now, they are not going to be able to treat you, they are not going to be able to diagnose you for that condition, but they can help guide you and give you the guidance so that you can, one, hopefully put that disease or illness process in check a little bit for your own health and benefit. And that's the most important, but also let you know, hey, by the way, this right here is now a presumptive condition. You may want to go file, for additional benefits for that. So that's why you would still want to do that. Again, you're helping us with some data collection, but you're also going to become a little bit more informed patient on your own overall health.
Let me add a little bit to what Mark said. The original registry, going way back, is the Agent Orange registry. And when that first came out, and when disability for conditions related to Agent Orange came out, we had things like type 2 diabetes, Hodgkin's disease, ischemic heart disease, and we had Parkinson's disease added later on. Well, one of the things that's just recently been added is Parkinsonism, and it's a completely different condition than Parkinson's disease. Along the line came prostate cancer, and we added that, along with other respiratory cancers, and now bladder cancer, hypothyroidism, and now the one that you see in the PACT Act, which is hypertension. All of these were added due to veterans enrolling in the Agent Orange registry and helping us, as Mark said, gather the data that allowed us to say that it is as least as likely as not that these disabilities are related to your service in Vietnam. Now, for those of you from the Gulf War, we have a long list of disabilities already related. But as time goes on, additional concerns and additional conditions are going to be related to the burn pits. They're going to be related to other toxic exposure. And your participation in those registries is going to allow the VA to do that kind of research that will add additional conditions to the PACT Act list of presumptives.
We even encourage people a lot, like the gentleman that did ask how do I know if I'm on the Agent Orange registry? If I'm the one he's going to be talking to, I will ask him, oh, look him up. If he is on the registry, I'm going to be able to see the date that you're on the registry. And then I'm going to ask, in the Gulf War, the airborne hazards, these are included. I'm going to ask, well, since 2016, since 2018, or 2004, have you had any real major health changes? Been diagnosed with several other conditions that you weren't diagnosed with at that time and stuff? If the answer is yes, we would still encourage you to do the registry again. Now, it's not going to have to be as detailed because we already have so much more information. Where you served, where you deployed, all that information. What we're going to do is just see that health, and more than likely we're going to do it over a telephone, but we're going to be able to upload and add to it so that that way the registry has the most up-to-date health information on you for the data collection.
All right, thanks for that info. Next up, Sue wants to know, can a non-enrolled veteran just pay out of pocket for screening? Now, we've been talking primarily about enrolled veterans or veterans who are enrolled in healthcare, but we're also trying to talk to non-enrolled veterans, folks who are not enrolled with the VHA. Maybe not even had any connection with the VA at all. So again, the question is, would a veteran want to pay out of pocket for a screening?
At this time, the answer would be no. However, depending on that veteran's situation, if they served in basically the greater Middle East, those number of countries in the slide before from 1990 on, or in the Agent Orange, that slide showing all those areas. If you served in those areas, even though you are not enrolled at this time, you are eligible for enrollment. Now, if, say, for unfortunately the naval veteran that served in the mid 80s was stationed on board a ship, for the most part, never really deployed anywhere, but feels they have and likely do have some exposure to asbestos. And they feel they have a medical condition as a result of that exposure. We would want to encourage them to file for that condition, get a medical diagnosis, but file for the condition. And
Right.
also, just because a medical condition is not a presumptive condition, and Larry can go into detail, does not mean you shouldn't file for it if you feel it's because of your military. You can do that. Now, for that naval person, he's not enrolled. If he files and he's granted service connection, he would then be eligible for enrollment. And Chris can go into detail too. There are several other ways to get enrolled in the VHA healthcare system.
Right. But the real question really is, would they want to pay out of pocket? And I guess we should really talk about what the process is. That
At this time,
if you
the
go out to the
VA is not
PACT Act
allowing it.
website, yeah, exactly. If you go out to the PACT Act website and you file a claim, and you've got your information in that claim, and Larry, you might want to talk more detail about this, but when you file that claim, it's going to start the process to make a determination whether or not we need to proceed, and whether or not you will get notification that a toxic screening needs to be accomplished, and who would be providing that toxic screening. Correct, Larry?
Absolutely, Scott. So let's take the claim from start to finish. So we've all talked about everybody going and seeing their CVSO and seeing the VA. So you go in and you decide that you're going to apply for disability under the PACT Act. And the CVSO makes a determination that yes, you have these PACT Act conditions, but you also have some other conditions that may be eligible for service connection outside of the PACT Act. Maybe an orthopedic issue, your back, your knees, other disabilities that may have happened while you were in the military. Maybe you contracted another disease that's not related to the PACT Act, but there's evidence of that in your service medical record. So the CVSO will reach out and get your service medical record. They'll request it from the National Archives in St. Louis, and they'll want to go through your service medical record with a fine-tooth comb. If you file a claim online, or you file a claim directly with VA, we'll also get your service medical record. We'll bring it in, we'll put it into your electronic file, and then your VSO or anybody who needs to, or if you do, are able to go into your record and review your medical record to say, hey, what about this condition that happened? What about that condition? And so oftentimes, let's say you were you're in the Army and you were in the artillery, and the question is, how's your hearing? Well, that's not on the Agent Orange list. That's not on the PACT Act. But it is true that if you are in a high noise environment and you now suffer from hearing loss, it may very well be that that hearing loss can be related to your military service. You can not only receive compensation for that, but also medical care and hearing aids for that condition. And so you really, we want to get the chance to talk to all veterans and make sure that we're not only looking at Agent Orange, or we're not only looking at PACT Act conditions, but we're looking at the whole veteran and anything that might have happened while you were in the military service.
Absolutely. And well, yes, here right now we are concentrating on healthcare because this is medical center, but at the same time, I think it bears repeating that again, it's not just about your medical care. There's also compensation involved. There's also survivor benefits. There's a lot of other things. So going to those VSOs, as I said before, they work very hard for the veterans, and they will ask a wide range of questions, not just help you out with the PACT Act, certainly help you with the PACT Act, but other aspects as well for receiving your full range of benefits. So next question is, how long does Title 10 deployment for Guard have to last to be eligible for VA healthcare? And I would say probably, Chris, you need to answer that one.
So, depending on how much time they served, they have to have so much active duty service to be able to be eligible for healthcare. But if you were to file for a claim saying that you have a disability, you would be eligible for healthcare in that aspect as well. So there's two sides to it. So if you filed for a disability within the PACT Act and they issued you a percentage, then you would be eligible for healthcare in that way as well.
All right, good news. So Tim says, or is asking, is there a cutoff date to register for the PACT Act? And that's a really good question.
Okay, there is no cutoff date to register for VA disability benefits. If you register before August 10th of 2023, your claim will be backdated to the date that the president signed the law, August 10th of 2022. But you are not limited by the date, August of 2023. You can file this claim anytime after that or anytime you're ready to file. But the disabilities that are shown under the PACT Act, if you file now, your date of claim will stretch all the way back to August of 2023. And you say, well, if you file now, over 329,000 veterans have already filed for disability under the PACT Act. In Ohio alone, there have been 12,500 completed claims for the PACT Act, 21,000 claimants distinct in Ohio to the PACT Act. So if you haven't filed your claim already and you're not one of those 21,000, I encourage you to get in touch with us and let us backdate your claim to August 10th of 2022.
And even if they're not ready to file that claim right now, or we may not be ready before then, can they not also file an intent to claim, which would go ahead and extend that opportunity for them?
Absolutely, Scott. If you file what we call an intent to file, then you have 1 year from the date you sign the intent to file to actually complete that claim, therefore extending your retroactive benefit out even farther. Well, how do you file an intent to file? All you need to do is call 1-800-827-1000. That's the VBA's toll-free number, 1-800-827-1000. And they can take your intent to file right over the phone. I realize that sometimes there is a wait on the telephone to get to talk to a VBA rep. So if you go on to va.gov/PACT, you can file your intent to file online. You don't have to have the whole claim already laid out. You could put in the intent to file, and then you have a full year to gather the information.
Exactly. Okay, Mary, heard there are dates when the benefits and enrollment would begin.
There were dates originally in the PACT Act. Some of the disabilities related to the PACT Act were to begin over a staggered start and over the course of the next year or two. When that law made its way to the president's desk, he decided that all of the benefits would start August 10th of 2022. And so the delayed start of some of the benefits, which was in the original bill, was changed. And President Biden made all disabilities starting on August 10th of 2022.
Terrific. Brad says he was at Camp Pendleton and they burned everything. Can he sign up for the burn pit registry from being near the burn pits at Camp Pendleton?
Unfortunately, for the registry, the answer would be no. A registry is set up for a specific demographic group at a specific time. And although I'm not disputing that Camp Pendleton, they were burning anything and everything, that does not meet the Airborne Hazards Open Burn Pit Registry. However, if he were to feel you have a medical condition similar to the listing of the presumptives as a result of or on the PACT Act and the toxic exposure, the burn pits, things like that. If you have a medical condition and it has been diagnosed, you could still file for that. It just will not be automatically presumed as a result of your military exposure. And that's just because you don't fit into that particular demographic group. And that's where Larry can explain a little bit more on that. But, and I like to call it, there's just a little bit of homework that the veteran would have to do to try and help make that nexus and explain, hey, I do have asthma, and I think it's as a result of being around all the burn pits at Camp Pendleton. There's just a little bit of work the veteran's going to want to do to help VBA to be able to make that connection. But that's where I'll let Larry explain that a little bit better.
So we've been talking about presumptive service-connected disability. But if the disability, as was mentioned here, you're at Camp Pendleton and you have disabilities, you have conditions that you feel are related to exposure to toxic gas and burn pits, and it's not actually on any kind of a registry or any kind of presumptive list. We need to show three things in order for something to be considered service-connected. There must be a documented occurrence of the condition while you were in the military. Maybe there's a record of you standing watch over those burn pits. Maybe there's a record of you seeking medical treatment for respiratory conditions. In the case of any other disability, maybe you were in parachute training and you fell and broke some bones during your parachute training. Those things would be documented in your service medical record. The next thing that must exist is a current chronic disability. You may have been exposed while you were in the military, but do you have the problem now? Is there a condition now that is causing you any kind of concern or distress? For example, you broke a bone back in the military. Is there any relationship to your current condition now of that broken bone? So I sprained my ankle when I was in the Navy 30 years ago. If I sprain my ankle again now, is that related to the sprained ankle in the military? No, and here's why. The third element is that there must be a link, a qualifying link between the current disability and the disability that happened in the military service. They call that a nexus or a link between the two. So you must have a disability or a condition that occurred on active duty. You must have a current, continuous, or chronic condition, and we must be able to show a link between those conditions. And that's the standard for disability that's not on the presumptive list. So that's why we're pressing the presumptive list so much, because it's so much easier to get service connected if something is on one of these presumptive lists.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for all that great information. I think we have actually gone through all the questions, unless anyone else has anything else to add here real quick. If not, I want to tell everybody about an event coming up in Lima, Ohio, July 15th. We are actually doing a PACT Act enrollment and education event at the American Legion Post 96 from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on July 15th. This is an opportunity for you to go and talk face to face with people about your particular issues. We're going to have the enrollment folks there for VHA. We're going to have VBA there to help with filing PACT Act claims real time, actually have a toxic screening, actually talk to a healthcare provider to get your first appointment with the healthcare system, and have the VSO there to help with any other questions you might have, or to put you in contact and get you connected with other local resources for veterans. Again, that's on July 15th, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the American Legion Post 96 in Lima. If you can't make it to that one, we're actually going to have one also August 5th in Richmond, and August 26th at Middletown, both at American Legions. And if you want more information about those events, you can go to our website. That's www.dayton.va.com. And that will actually take you to our medical center's website. You can go to events. And actually, we encourage you to go to those events and pre-register and get a time slot to go talk to the experts. We're actually trying to get everyone to register within a certain window, so not everybody shows up at the same time. We don't want 200 people waiting in line all at once, so we rather go ahead and book out some times for everybody. So hopefully you'll have some interest in that and come on out to Lima. So again, I don't think we have any other questions. I don't see anything else in the chat. I hope that you found this helpful and informative. I just want to tell you that if you are looking for more information, you need more answers, feel free to reach out to our eligibility enrollment office at 937-267-7608, or you can call the PACT Act office at 937-268-6511, extension 5807. Or again, you can go to the website www.va.gov/PACT, and there you will be able to file a claim. If you're really tech savvy and you don't feel like you need to ask any questions, go on out to the website. It lists all the presumptive conditions and all the theaters of operations that qualify veterans for care under the PACT Act, and you can file a claim there. But it's also a great resource to determine whether or not you want to proceed and whether or not you want to go ask anyone else any other questions. So there are 4 ways to enroll with the Dayton VA Medical Center for Healthcare. You can either come directly to the Dayton VA and go to the eligibility enrollment desk, or and Chris, are we still taking applications at the CBOCs, at the community-based outpatient clinics?
So the CBOX, they still do take the 1010 easy applications,
All right,
and they'll send them to us here in Dayton for now. Yes.
So we'll give you those locations here in a few minutes. You can also go to www.chooseva.gov/health, and you can fill out an application there. You can also call the National Health and Eligibility Center at 877-222 8387, or you can download the VA Form 1010EZ and mail it to the Dayton VA Medical Center at 4100 West 3rd Street, Dayton, Ohio 45428. Again, you can contact us directly at the medical center at extension 2035 or extension 1398. We'll be glad to help you any way we can. You can also call the regional offices or the regional clinics, the CBOCs, community-based outpatient clinics, and their numbers are there. Again, we'll be sharing this video with you later on, so don't feel like you have to write these numbers down right away. So again, if you want more information about VA healthcare, go to www.choose.va.gov/health. And again, there's a wealth of information out there for that, for learning more about the VA healthcare system. So I want to thank our panelists for all the great information they have shared with us this evening. And thanks again to everyone who attended the event. We hope you found it informative and helpful. And again, feel free to share that information with your fellow veterans or spouses, military spouses that might benefit from this information. I want everyone to have a great rest of your evening. And thanks to all our veterans for their service to a grateful nation.